What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about 5 rules that all wide receivers need to follow. So rule number 1 is going to be taking what the DB gives you versus press coverage no matter what route you're running. So this wide receiver is going to be running like a 12-yard dig, or like some of you might think of it as like a 12-yard in route, but he has a DB who's lined up inside shade press. So the DB's entire goal being inside shade press is to not let us run to the inside. He does not want us to run a slant. He doesn't want us to run a dig, doesn't want us to run a post. He wants to force everything to the outside, which is where his help is, which is the sideline. So as a wide receiver, if my game plan in this situation is I'm going to give a move to the outside, give like a jab, and take the inside release and hope that he jumps, he's not going to do that if he's disciplined. You guys, a disciplined DB is going to always hold his leverage because that's his responsibility. But this wide receiver does it perfectly. This is exactly how you would ultimately want to run this route. So he comes off the ball. There's a move inside, takes the outside release, puts the brakes on and drops his hips and is able to slip underneath and maintain spacing, obviously get separation on the route, but also keep timing with his quarterback. That is the number one key. So let's take this back from the top. So if he would have given this like jab fake and taken the inside release, reason why we don't want to do that, guys, like this is one-on-ones, so there aren't any other receivers on the field. But in a real game situation, this wide receiver's lined up on the outside, he's running this dig. Maybe our slot receiver is running like an 8-yard dig. And if you force this inside release, DB gets hands and he reroutes us and our dig is right on top of the slot. Let's say the slot ran the route correctly. One defender could end up guarding both routes, and that is bad spacing on a play. Generally, what play concepts are trying to do is to pull one defender out of the play so another route can open up, or vice versa. Your route can open up because of another receiver running his route correctly. Now, another reason why you don't want to force the inside is if this DB gets hands, that can disrupt timing. That's his whole goal in press coverage, is to get hands and disrupt timing with the quarterback to throw off his drop timing, so he has to go to another receiver. So what we want to do with our releases, we want to attack his leverage. He gives just a simple crossover move, nothing super fancy, just gives a step to the outside, then one jab to the inside, and takes the outside release. He's getting up into his route. He's not sacrificing any timing. Now, our goal always in this situation should be to stack the DB, right? So stacking the DB is when you get over the top of him and he is trailing directly behind you, kind of like behind your hips. So when we get to the top of the break, maybe we could give a move. Instead of dropping our hips, maybe we give like a rocker step. A rocker step is where you step to the inside, fake to the outside. It's like a 2-step break. DB jumps that way thinking it's an out route, and then we got separation and we kept spacing on the play. We're running the route exactly how it was drawn up on paper. Now, if this DB plays it well, maybe he's a little bit faster than us and he's running hip to hip, maybe I can't stack him. What we'd want to do, and this is why a lot of receivers are uncomfortable with this, is we want to drop our hips and slip back underneath him. And going into this, it's super important that we are selling vertical. That's the only way that this works. A lot of wide receivers in this situation, they'll take off and they're not running fast, right? Or maybe they run fast and right before they get to the break point, they start to slow down. The second you start to slow down, that's something called an indicator. And when you slow down, the DB slows down. And when you try to slip under him, you're going to run right into him. That's why a lot of receivers are uncomfortable with this. So your speed's got to sell vertical. Second thing that sells vertical is your strides. When you're going up to the top of the break and you're trying to sell fade, your strides got to be like how you're running a deep ball. Like the quarterback threw it deep and you're trying to chase it down. A lot of receivers, right before they break, what they do is they take these happy feet steps to slow themselves down. Can't do that. And then last but not least, your body language has got to sell fade. I always tell my receivers, pretend like you're pulling a sled. I'm sure some of you have ran with one of those speed sleds before, a parachute. You have like a slight forward lean with your upper half. That's what we need. All of those things say that we're running a fade. And then obviously if we could drop my hips on a dime, we're going to talk about how to do that effectively in the next clip of film that we talk about. But we're able to slip back underneath them and still maintain spacing and get obviously separation. That's textbook. That's how you'd run a dig versus inside shade press. So we're going to play this again full speed, and then we'll get into our next rule of route running. But guys, make sure that you take what the DB gives you. Don't force an inside release simply because you have an inside breaking route. Now, before we get into this next rule, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you guys would like a 2-month-long workout schedule you can do this summer, check out that very first link in the description below for our elite wide receiver training package. It is 2 months of daily gym workouts and field workouts that wide receivers can do. We map out every single exercise and drill by the exact sets and reps. We put it into a schedule so it's easier for you guys to follow. It's like Monday, you're doing this workout in the gym, you're doing this workout on the field. Tuesday, you're doing this workout in the gym, you're doing this workout on the field. So it's extremely easy, and we provide a video example of each gym exercise and each on-field workout. Plus, we throw in with our elite wide receiver training package, completely free, a 4-week-long speed workout plan. So it will also help you with your speed and getting faster, which is essential at the wide receiver position. So guys, go to that very first link in the description below if you want to get our elite wide receiver training package. Let's get back to this video. Now, the next rule of route running we're going to be discussing, you guys, is being violent with your break. So this has a lot to do with that dig route that we were talking about, but really, honestly, anytime that you guys have to drop your hips on a route, you need to focus on being violent. So what are routes where you have to drop your hips? A 5-yard hitch, maybe a dig where you have to slip underneath a guy, maybe a 12 back to 10-yard curl, maybe a 15 back to 12-yard comeback. That's where you have to drop your hips. Now, the routes may differ, but the break technique always stays the same. So this wide receiver, again, going up into the break, he gives a little hesitation move, and now look what he's doing. He's selling vertical just like the last example. Our goal is to get that DB to open up his hips, just like how it was on that dig. But at the break point, you guys, I want to pay attention to how violently he drops his hips. The only way that we are able to slow down as a wide receiver is by dropping my hips violently. So what do I mean by violently? I tell my receivers all the time, pretend like you're playing musical chairs. So the music stops, and in this specific case, he snaps down on his inside foot. You could also do this on your outside foot because this is man-to-man coverage. Generally, if it's against zone, your routes are off of steps. Like if you're running a comeback, your break is going to be off of your 4th inside step or maybe your 3rd inside step. So you only count the steps that you take with your inside foot. Might be a little confusing for some of you, but the step doesn't necessarily matter when it's man coverage. You're just really trying to get to a landmark, which is 15 yards. And when you're at 15, you need to drop violently to stop yourself. So when that music stops, you guys, you are trying to bring your chin down to your knee as quickly as possible. Sometimes I'll tell my receivers with your hands, you want to try to tie your shoelaces. Now, you don't want your hands to go dead. This receiver kind of makes his hands go dead. I call it briefcasing it. And sometimes what that can do is slow down your feet at the break. I think he got a little bit stuck because of that. You guys want to keep your hands natural. Make sure your hands are running, but we have to drop violently. So how can you improve on that? Obviously, repetition helps with that, repping out these different movements, but working on your explosiveness in the gym as a wide receiver, doing Olympic lifts like a power clean, a box jump, anything that's going to increase your explosiveness will increase that ability to drop violently on a dime. But that's how we slow down. Because guys, if I'm running full speed, like I'm running hard, I'm running with the same stride length, I'm running with that forward lean pad level, and going up into the break, I just slowly sink my hips. We're going to take a lot of steps at the break point, or what we're going to do is we're going to have like a drift at the break point. To stop yourself on a dime, we have to be violent. And how violent you are with your hips can create some energy and explode you out of the break. So that's the second rule of route running, you guys. When you have to drop your hips, you need to make sure that we are violent at the top of the break to get me out of this route fast and to be able to put the brakes on. Now, the next rule of route running that we're going to be discussing, guys, is called getting skinny. So this wide receiver is going to be running just a simple 10-yard dig route, but he's facing a DB who's lined up outside leverage, right? So he's outside shade, and he's probably like 3 yards away. We would consider this something called catch technique. So there's 3 types of man coverage, right? You have press coverage, where he's right up on the line or maybe a yard away. Then you have catch man, where maybe he's 2 yards away or 3 yards away. And then you have off man, where maybe he's like 5 to 8 yards off. The last example with the comeback, that was like off man. This would be catch man. So getting skinny has to do with your like route stem. So obviously when we have a DB who's off like this, we want to close the space, and we're going to talk about closing the space and what I mean by that later on in this video. But we want to close the space, get to his toe, and give him move. But the thing that screws up a lot of receivers when it comes to spacing is that when they close the space, what they'll do after that is they run away from contact, and that can screw up spacing on the play. Anytime that you are running a route away from a DB's leverage, you have to make sure that you get skinny. Because think about it, guys. I know this is one-on-one, so there's really not anybody else on the field, but in a real game, this is a real coverage you will see. You'll see outside leverage catch technique, and the reason why this DB's outside leverage is he has help to the inside. Opposite of the DB's leverage is where he has help. So he probably has a safety. He probably has a linebacker. So a lot of times when guys have to run a post or maybe run a curl or even a dig, what they do is they close space with this guy, they give a move, and then what they do is they run away because they're afraid of contact. And then when they end up running their dig, they're running right into the help. We can't do that, you guys. So I'm going to play this full speed because this receiver does a great job of getting skinny to maintain spacing on the play. And again, the ball was a little bit late, so it hit him at this opposite hash, but he's not getting to that opposite hash too early. He's not screwing up the quarterback's drop timing. He's not screwing up the quarterback's progression because he's looking at one read, coming back to the dig, or maybe looking at the dig, seeing what a defender does, and throwing it. So we cannot screw that up by just getting to the route spot or getting to where the quarterback's trying to throw it to me too soon. So getting skinny means running right past this DB's hip. You essentially want to squeeze past him. In this case, this wide receiver's left hip wants to get right past this DB's left hip. And again, like he breaks down on this cut. You guys don't necessarily necessarily have to break down on this. What you could do is when you're getting skinny is you could lean into this DB. You could use your upper half to lean into him and then just stick off of that outside foot and go and almost push off of him. But guys, we have to get skinny. I cannot run away from contact because, again, that will screw up spacing on the play. Notice all the things we're talking about: timing, spacing. If you give the quarterback the right spacing and you stay on time with the play concept, I'm telling you guys, you could get separation easier and you will get more targets. So third rule of route running, make sure you get skinny. Now, fourth rule of route running is making your slant route look exactly like how you have to run a fade route versus press coverage. So we have this DB who's playing inside shade press, and we have to run a 3-step slant. So a release that we could obviously use here would be something called a diamond release. A diamond release is where you attack this DB's outside shoulder and outside hip for 3 hard steps. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it look like a fade. We got to sell that same 3 steps with the same things we were talking about in the very first example, you guys. Route running, it should not be complicated. You don't want to have a bunch of complex things, a million different things going on in your head. Keep things simple, you guys. So when you're selling those 3 steps, you got to make sure that you're selling it with speed. You got to make sure that you're selling it with your strides. They got to stay the same, and your body language has that nice forward lean, like you're pulling a sled for those 3 steps. And that's what gets that DB to open up. Now, sometimes, guys, DBs are a little bit more disciplined. They will pay attention. They will be able to sit on that diamond release if you don't make it look exactly like how you would run your fade route. So a lot of times when guys like run a fade, right? They don't just do a speed release and take off and run. When you have inside shade press, what you would do is you would give some type of move to hold that DB's leverage inside and then go run the fade, right? So remember, just like the dig route that we were talking about, we want to make it look like a fade. Same thing with our slant. So what does he do before he does this diamond release? He does a little crossover move. So maybe this DB's seen that before. Maybe he's done that on a fade route, and then he accelerates up to the outside, and that's when that DB's like, oh crap, I don't want to get beat on a fade. We get him to open up, and then bam, we put the brakes on and slip underneath. So that's the same thing when you're in the middle of the field, when you're in the red zone. Another way you could do this, you guys, let's say you see guys like Justin Jefferson or Devontae Adams do this all the time. They give this little slide to the outside or skip to the outside, then they take off and go. And then when they have to run a slant, they give this little skip, and then they give a move, DB jumps, and then we run a slant. So guys, make your slant route versus press look exactly to a T like your fade route. Don't just do a diamond release with no inside fake. Do a diamond release after you do this inside fake and pair those releases together so you're more likely to get separation. Now, rule number 5, you guys, is going to be closing the space versus that catch man or off man technique. So this wide receiver is going to be running just a 10-yard, kind of like out route, almost looks like a corner route in a sense, but I believe this is an out route. And this DB, you can't really see him, but he's sitting at about 5 yards away, and this wide receiver's break is at 10 yards. So you see how when he off the ball, he closes the distance with this DB and then gets up into his out route, right? So that's what I mean by closing the space. Reason why we want to close the space is we don't want to allow this DB any room to recover. A lot of times what wide receivers will do versus this look is that they will close the space and they make their inside fake right about here. They're at 3 yards, DB's sitting at 5 yards, but we still have to get up to 10 yards to make this break. So guys will give an inside fake to attack the leverage, DB jumps, and then they try to go vertical. But because there's this gap of space, that's why that DB is playing off man. That's why he's playing catch man, because the receiver eventually has to get vertical to his route at 10 yards. So if we give that move and we have 2 yards of space and I go, that DB can cut off my angle and meet me at the break point of the route. Or worse, what receivers will do is they'll take a really wide angle to avoid the contact, and then they cut down the amount of space that the quarterback has to throw to them. So guys, whenever we have a DB who's sitting in catch man, off man, we have to close the space. We got to get right to his toes, because when I close the space and get to his toes, that allows me to do what? That allows me to get skinny. That allows me to get right past his hip and beat him to the break point, which allows me to get more separation and also give the quarterback room to throw me open. So guys, make sure whenever we're facing catch man, whenever we're facing off man, and my route is a little bit deeper than where that DB is sitting at, we must close the space and we must get to his toes.